Take three. New year, new me, everybody. Not really. New year, same me, but hopefully better this time. Um, oh, there we go. So today, I'm with Brennan Christensen, the director of last year's smash hit on Shudder, Superhost. And he's already in here, so I'm going to go ahead and jump him or add him in. He's underway here. Ooh, we got some extra. We got more people in here than the last attempt. Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Great.
Perfect.
How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just keeping busy, but
Yeah.
it's good.
Keeping busy. Starting Thursday, is it? You're starting a new movie production?
We go to camera on February 5th, so
Oh,
yeah, we're
gotcha.
just in the early days right now, just like
Gotcha.
casting, locations, all that stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, yeah, I was just telling everybody about a little bit about Superhost and how much of a kind of a smash hit it was, how well it was received. I myself personally loved it. I mean, I would probably easily put it on my top 10 of the horror films last year.
Cool,
It,
man. That's
it
awesome.
has probably one of the most brutal deaths. It's very rare that my jaw drops when watching a horror, like any film, but like just that scene, it's just like, oh shit.
Right.
It was,
It's the moment where the movie kind of takes the big turn and you go, oh wow, this is going there. I see.
yeah, absolutely. And like the film is very like I was going into a little bit. It feels very real. Like this is something that, this isn't supernatural. This is something that could really happen. Like,
Right.
it's something that like, I myself have never stayed in an Airbnb, but like, I think I was watching like a behind the scenes of the film on YouTube, how, most of the time you don't really, you're not really in contact with the host. Like it's mostly like texting or messaging or calling, and you don't really, have a face to face with them generally.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the whole thing's pretty automated now. It's kind of like Uber for houses. You get in the car, you don't really have to talk to them if you don't want to. You tip through
Yeah.
the app, everything's kind of just done. It's very similar to that most of the time. I mean, some of the times the people are very proud of they might even be living, next door or something like that. So there is kind of that service side of it where they want to, show you the place and, make your stay as comfortable as possible. But it is kind of interesting, when you have a technology based thing like this and you've got locks that you rely on, all these things that are used for protection or anything like that, when they all of a sudden get turned on you, that's when you can find some kind of scary situations happening. And that was kind of the point of that film, is just sort of taking the things that we take for granted. Like if someone knocks on your door, you can check your ring or whatever,
Yeah.
who's there. Before, you had to walk up, put your eye to the keyhole, or not the keyhole, the little hole in the door, and you can see, and there's always that creepiness there.
Yeah.
So when you've got the safety net of just looking on your phone and all of a sudden you strip that away, it's just kind of an interesting dynamic that was fun to play with.
Yeah, for sure. And what a brilliant cast to really deliver that kind of that aspect. Like, Gracie Gillum, I
Hmm.
mean, she deserves some type of award for that performance, because I mean that was just, it was over the top, obviously
Hmm.
meant to be. And it's just like, I feel like it's funny because I've seen her in other films. Like I saw her, I'm like, why does she look so familiar? And I'm like, wait, that's the girl from Tales of Halloween.
Right.
And
Yeah, she's just been in a bunch of stuff, so she definitely has that face. And it was really the Disney thing, because she was in these teen beach party movies where she was playing this like Annette Funicelli kind of larger than life singing and dancing on the beach performance. And I, when we first started talking, that was what stuck out the most, because it's just that the fakeness in a Disney film like that you're
yeah,
putting on this grandiose performance. Having that to draw from, and then having sort of, if you're doing press for Disney or something like that, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff where you're being the best version of yourself, and you're putting
yeah,
on the big smile for the cameras, and then that once the camera comes off, it's just like it's gone, right? So
yeah,
that was really the
absolutely.
big thing that was really exciting for me to work with, because I knew that she could do it just because she's done it for years.
Absolutely. Yeah, she definitely has that. Like I know what you mean. Like as soon as the camera's off, she's like, "Oh, I'm cool,
Yeah.
calm, collective now. Now I'm not a
Hmm.
psychopathic murderer.
Right, for sure.
So let's talk about a little bit of like the production. So you shot this thing um during the pandemic. So let's go a little bit like obviously things are a little different. Like, you know, you have to have their set, like, you know, people limited people in an area, I'm sure being safe and all that stuff. So tell us a little bit about like, you know, that process.
Yeah, that was really interesting because I mean, there wasn't a lot of data out there on how to do it. You know, if you were working with unions and we were working with SAG, like there were a lot of restrictions that you had to adhere to. That you know, you're talking to other producers that are kind of figuring it out themselves. Like everybody was a guinea pig. So it was just kind of the challenging part was just to find people that had done it that could advise you because you'd be talking to the unions and they didn't even have really strict guidelines figured out yet. So you're like, okay, well, what, you know, how much is this going to cost? Like when, how often do we test? How do we do all these things? And
Yeah.
you quickly find out that um, roughly 10% of your budget is going to go towards COVID related things, testing, having a set medic, things like that, that you just can't get around or else they won't let you shoot. So that was the biggest challenge, I think, for us, just trying to navigate that and just really make it um, get us aware, get all the actors aware, get the crew aware of what we needed to do. But when you know, when you take 10% of your budget and just throw it in the garbage, not in the garbage, but you know, you remove it from on screen stuff, all of a sudden you're challenged with like, well, where is that coming from? Because that has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So you find your crew sort of shrinking and shrinking, and you're really just looking at the crew and going, like, what can we do with how small can we go before we kind of break the setup? And fortunately, I'd worked with these guys and girls for quite a while, just in the commercial space and short films and stuff like that. So and they all kind of came up together out of film school, so I knew that they were really multi-talented, like they could wear multiple hats, and that was just this kind of a shoot. We needed to do that because all in, it was me, my producer Curtis, and the crew of 6, and it's just like, you know, that's student film levels of crew
Yeah.
size. So that was the hardest part, was just kind of figuring out exactly how to handle it and how, you know, how you're going to shoot and everything, and just scale the film down accordingly.
Hmm. I guess it kind of helps that like you really didn't have a big cast either, because I mean
Yeah.
you really only had, you know, initially 4 characters that you
Hmm.
know of, or we saw anyway. You know,
Right.
so yeah, I was also watching the behind the scenes that COVID was not the only there. Let's talk about the Beetle incident.
So yeah, it was weird. I mean, when we were looking for a house, we found this one house. It was great, but I found it back in March, and we didn't shoot till October. So the initial plan was to shoot in the spring,
Yeah.
but COVID obviously just made everything everybody pretty much stopped production at that point because everything was shutting down. So we had this location that was great, but we didn't, you know, we weren't shooting at that period. So when things started to open up and things, there was a little bit more clarity. We picked our dates, and that particular time, I guess, is when these little beetle bugs kind of swarm this particular area, and it's really weird because you'd go into the forest, they wouldn't be there. You'd be going, you know, where the stores are, they aren't there. But right around this house, it was just swarms of these tiny little beetles. And when you're shooting, they're just, you know, they're just attracted to the sunlight. So
Yeah.
if you're shooting a daytime exterior, they're just going to flock to wherever, you know, if the actor's wearing a white shirt or something like that, there's a little bit of sunlight hitting them, they're going to just flock there, and they're just going to land and just sort of live on them. And so you're constantly cutting, you're constantly flicking them off. And it was just sort of an endless thing. And it only seemed to really be a problem when we were shooting outside. So we had, like we had the biggest scene that it was a problem with was the first scene with Barbara Crampton in it, when they're all outside the front of the house, and Rebecca shows up out of nowhere and she yells at her and Barbara leaves. That we started shooting, and we were just like, this is impossible. It looked like it was raining, but like just, you know, just
Bugs
these
everywhere.
things were everywhere. Yeah, so we had to stop and just sat around waiting for like 3 hours for the sun to go a little bit more behind the mountain, so that it was just kind of overcast completely and they weren't really flocking anymore. So there would still be the errant ones, and it was just one of those things. It's like, you know, there's always something, and that was, fortunately, it's not a bad problem considering what you can have, but
Yeah.
it was definitely just like bizarre. And when we wrapped and we were kind of wrapping out of the house and everything, they were completely gone. So it was just right then. Like when we
Yeah.
scouted a week before the shoot, they weren't there. It was just the day we loaded in, the day before production, that they just sort of decided to come hang with us.
It must have been it must have been mating season for a split a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's weird. It was very strange.
It was like this. What was this past summer with when all the cicadas came back around here? Um, those things like not.
Where are you?
I'm out of Indiana. I'm
Okay,
about
cool.
I'm roughly I'm kind of like in between like Indianapolis and Cincinnati.
Okay,
So like in Cincinnati, apparently it was like a huge like swarm of them. Like people would be like mowing their grass and they would just be hanging on them. I'm like, I couldn't
crazy.
imagine. And then they have that loud like hissing noise that they make.
Right.
So it's like I couldn't imagine like compared to your situation with the beetle bugs, like shooting like a film with all these cicadas hissing everywhere. It's just like that
Yeah,
would be
that sounds a lot worse.
yeah. Luckily, in like where I live, like I don't live in like a big city, so luckily, like we didn't have that big of an issue. But I remember, speaking of beetle bugs, back when I lived with my parents, we'd always have these little ladybugs. We called them stink bugs. And
Oh yeah.
it'd always be like when like the farmers would be like tilling the corn or something. They would like migrate over to like houses and stuff, and they'd be like just all over the house, all over.
Hmm.
They'd get inside. They'd be up in our lights and everything. It was annoying. Like we'd have to take a vacuum cleaner and just like suck them all out. It was ridiculous.
Brutal.
Yeah.
And bugs are very strange when they do that. In Las Vegas, where I am, there was a grasshopper thing about 3 years ago. There's videos all over Reddit and everything. You like the strip was just coated everywhere you stepped. It would just be crunch, crunch, crunch of just grasshoppers, and it was like a week long. And then they just sort of vanished, and it was just the most bizarre thing. Like you can look up on YouTube and stuff like that. Grasshoppers take over Vegas, and it's just the strip is just like every road is just grasshoppers. It's
Wow.
super. Yeah, it's very weird.
I think I remember hearing something about that. Maybe
Hmm.
I was actually getting ready to ask because I wasn't 100% sure where you were located. I know you said your time zone was Pacific, basically, so 3 hours behind me. I figured,
Hmm.
California or somewhere out, out there. Yeah, that whole time zone difference just always throws. I actually one of my interviews I did with somebody from Finland once,
Oh wow.
so I had to like time it up. Like they were like 11 hours ahead of me or something like that. So I had
Jeez.
to kind of like timing up things right, like because most of the time when I'm interviewing somebody, they're not really from my general area, so I have to kind
Uh,
of that's why I say like 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that okay, so 1 p.m. your time.
totally.
So
Yeah.
it's still afternoon for you, and it's almost nighttime for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I work third shift, so like that's why I kind of like I try to do like my interviews and then like I'll go to bed.
Okay. So
So like
okay.
after I'm done with this, I'll go to bed, and
Nice.
then I
Okay,
have to
that's
go.
cool.
Yeah. So bouncing back into so getting somebody like how was it working with somebody like Barbara Crampton, like getting somebody as iconic as her to be a part of your project.
Um, it's always kind of an unknown when you're bringing in someone like someone that has that clout or that weight in the genre. Like I've always tried to have someone like that. Stillborn had Michael Ironside, we had Steve McCaddy and Z, and so I wanted to have that kind of face. And so I talked to her about another film like a year before we shot, and it never happened. But I still had her kind of in my Rolodex. So when I had the script, it was just like a blind reach out, like, hey, would you want to come out and do this film? This is just a day or two. It'll be a lot of fun. You'll have a cool death. And she read it. She's like, yeah, let's do it. It's going to be awesome. So, I was very lucky to just get her in the first place and to have any interest. But when she came out, there's always that kind of like, okay, we've already established the crew. We've established the cast because we had the three there for the whole time. And Barbara came in the third week of the third and final week. And it was just like, who is going to come to set? Like, I don't know. And you're always worried about that because you don't want to work with divas and things like that. But she
Yeah.
came and it was just like, the most welcoming and open person ever. She just loves to do this. You can just tell she loves horror and she loves
Yeah.
getting dirty and doing all that stuff. So there was just like zero pretense whatsoever. She was just, incredibly lovely to work with. And after the fact, once the film had released, she became like an ambassador for the film, and she was posting about it all the time, sharing all this stuff. Like I would be surprised I wouldn't be surprised if Shudder got most of their viewership from her sharing about it, because she did so much. Like, it was nuts, and she continues to do so. She's just, we've become friends now, and it's just, it's awesome, because she is who you want her to be, and that's always so cool.
Yeah, she seems. I got to meet her at a convention back in, I want to say 2015, for like
Nice.
like it was like a Reanimator reunion, I think. And I just remember she's just very pleasant, very,
Mm-hmm.
like she's very, and she loves, the genre. Like, she's
Totally.
obviously, like, when she kind of came back from, when she wasn't doing it
Hiatus.
for a long
Yeah.
time, when she did Your Next, and then, she's, done a plethora of films now. I mean, like, last year, even with, Superhost and Jacob's Wife. I mean, that film,
Mm-hmm.
probably also in my top 10 of last year, just because
Cool.
of, the performances, the story, even, like, it
Mm-hmm.
had a very captivating kind of, like, kind of just a story for her, from her perspective.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah, for sure.
really delivered on that. And you can also tell that she really likes dying.
Yeah, so when we shot that, and that was another thing, because it's like, you have to get, you're going to get this brutal stabbing, you're going to be in the dirt, you're going to be bleeding, there's going to be blood everywhere, and there's kind of that hesitation to be like, hey, you got to put a little blood in your mouth so you can spit it out for the thing, and you're just like, here, just take a little bit. She just grabs it from me, she just like takes it back, fills her mouth, and you could tell she just loved to get dirty. So it was awesome to just not have to worry about it. You don't have to be like, oh, are you okay? Let's help her up,
Yeah,
get her up. She was just like, nah, get me, I'm good. I've got this. Like,
give
I
me that
want to
shit.
do it. So yeah, exactly. Pretty much exactly that. And so that was really cool to see, just that you can have that kind of brand recognition and, be that person, but still be so down to just get dirty and bloody and all that stuff. It was inspiring for me, just because it's like, I wouldn't have asked her to do that. I would have wanted her to do it, but I wouldn't have, I don't think I would have asked. So when she just opted to do it, it was just like, oh, great. Like, you're making the movie better. You're doing everything, because I know now that you just love doing this stuff.
Yeah, overachiever.
Yeah.
Well,
In a
but
good way.
yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, you'll have those actors that are actresses that'll be like as soon as you cut, they're like, "Get this shit off me!"
Right. Yeah. I've seen it all, and
Drama
Barb
queen.
was just, yeah, it was very cool. It was very
It's
cool of her.
it's good to have those kind of people, like, in film, just so, like, because, like, they're troopers,
Hmm.
and they don't, they're not going to complain about having to do something that, like you said, has to get down and dirty. I mean, that's what you got to do to, deliver.
Totally.
Um, so jumping into, like, the dynamic of uh, Teddy and Claire, talk about heartbreaking for Teddy when it came to the scene, the proposal, basically. Like, that
Hmm.
scene is just like, I'm sitting there watching this because you kind of grow a disliking for Claire really
Hmm.
early on, and I feel like that was obviously kind of the point,
Hmm.
just because she's the one that's really like, we have to get these likes, we have to get this, the most out of our, their page is starting to fail, and she's growing more and more agitated.
Yeah.
Like, talk about let's that, like, that scene, that dynamic between those two, like how that came about between those two, like working with those two, I guess we could say.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was the most challenging part of the script, was figuring out kind of their dynamic, because on the one hand, you've got characters that I think in general people are going to dislike, because they're those YouTubers, they're the fake
Yeah.
kind of thing. But at the same time, you need to give them problems in the story that they can work on together, and that can be relatable. And to me, even Claire, even though she's kind of off-putting to the audience sometimes, I feel like we're not getting the full picture of their relationship. We're probably coming in 3 to 4 years later. They've been doing this channel for a while.
Yeah.
They've done all this stuff. So they've kind of they're past the honeymoon phase of their relationship. They're into more of the settled in. She's very focused on the channel. He's more focused into her, and he just likes doing, the experience of the channel is more fun than the rewards that they get from the channel, which is what she's after.
Yeah.
And I mean, the big thing to me with those characters is just the fact that Claire, she hates the idea that Teddy's parents are paying for their rent and all that stuff. And they once had this channel that was able to pay for all that stuff. But now Teddy's parents have sort of become like the safety net for them. And I think that Teddy's fine with it. She's not. And so it creates this conflict for them where she, you know, her focus is just like, no, let's support for each other. I want to support you. I want you to support me. I don't want to have that. I want us to have this, you know, the self-sustaining relationship that we can have. And Teddy just doesn't, I don't think he was born with that. Like he probably had a silver spoon in his mouth and all that stuff. So he just doesn't understand that side of it. And he's just there for the, you know, for having fun. So when that dynamic happened, because I think, you know, any movie, any story, anybody that you can kind of relate to money problems, you know, like not being able to pay rent. I mean, how many movies do you see where you look at the table and there's like an eviction notice or past due on a bill or something like that? It's a pretty standard thing that you can empathize with immediately. So if you as a viewer are empathizing with Claire and Teddy's situation just from that, then I'm happy with that, because I don't care if you sympathize with them, but as long as you understand where they're coming from and why she's making these decisions that she's doing. Because you know, I read a lot of feedback and stuff like that, and I'll see people say like, oh, you know, there's so many red flags, we would have gotten out of there immediately. And it's kind of like, well, I don't know, would you? I mean, there's no there's no like threat there. There's weird for sure, like she's definitely off-putting, but it's a vacation. They've probably stayed in a bunch of them, and obviously they've dealt with Vera, Barb's character, and it's just like they've dealt with weirdos before, but there's no real reason to leave. And so it's definitely just sort of the situation where you're taking these characters who are inherently unlikable, giving them something that you can empathize with, and then just understanding why they get to where they get. And then once everything goes crazy, you can have fun watching them kind of fall apart.
Yeah, for sure. Like, cause you almost feel bad for Teddy, because like, you know, you can tell he was the more likable. You know, he's very animated, but he's more, you know, I guess you can connect with him on a more personal basis, just because you can just tell how he is. But like, you just feel like, I felt terrible because I feel like obviously when Rebecca, you know, kills Claire, it's like I almost wanted to see like more of a scrabble between like Teddy. Just never really, like, you can tell he just never had like some sort of like conflict. Like he's obviously not a fighter.
Right.
And
I mean, he says it himself. He's not a hero. He's a
he's not a hero.
True. And I mean, and that's also always tough too when you're doing like a stunt like that. Like we had the fire poker scripted. There was a little bit more of a scuffle and the same kind of outcome happens. But when you're there and you realize, like, you know, we don't have a props person, so we're using a real fire poker, and it's just like, you know, you're not 100% comfortable with charging at someone pointing a sharp object at you, and so you're kind of adjusting it. Yeah, so it's one of those things that had to, like, a concession that had to be made on the day when we were filming, because it's just, you can't, you know, the safety is so important of everybody. So you know, there was some comfort issues of just having that thing, so it was definitely simplified a little bit. But at the end of the day, I mean, the point is that he was definitely the beta of the two. He was the vlogger, not a fighter kind of thing. And it's just, you know, his final attempt to save her is just sort of thwarted immediately because, you know, I mean, it's a very cinematic thing to have that fight or flight and the fight kicks in. But, you know, I don't think everybody does. You see kind of you'll see online people, you know, in situations, they just don't help. They just film or something like that. I think that's kind of what he's been grown up with. They're used to just filming things, hiding behind the camera. They're not used to actually putting the camera away and going for it. I mean, you look at the proposal scene, and that to me is, everyone's always feeling sorry for Teddy about it. But to me, it's like even Teddy's at fault there because he's the one that set up the camera. You know, it is a very complicated situation where it's like they have this genuine moment happening, but she doesn't realize it's genuine, and he doesn't even really realize it's genuine because he's doing it for her, for the channel. So it's like, had he not set up the camera, she didn't see the camera, it might have been that genuine moment that kind of brought them back together. But instead, it was just another thing that they just couldn't experience like human beings. They had to, you know, there was the facade that they put up. And so that was just kind of the main point of the film for me. It was just like, how do you have a real moment? You go to a concert, you're filming it on your phone, you're never going to watch it. You know, you're just not really there. And I think these two people are never just there, you know?
Yeah, but yeah, that's I guess the thing between, like, you know, vloggers and real people. Because, like, you know, when I go to a concert, like, I might record, you know, just a little bit or something like that. But most of the time, like, I want to experience, you know, the show or something like that, or
Yeah, and you're probably a little bit older than, the 20s, I think,
yeah,
generation where they came up with YouTube. It's a little bit different for them.
yeah, yeah. I just turned 30, so I mean, I guess I'd be mixed in
You're
with.
at the cusp of it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm part of the older people now.
Right.
I turned 30 and my body's already falling apart.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing, but yeah, definitely. Yeah, just like that was just such a with being very subtle, like just the stab, like you were my favorite, and just stabs, and it's just like, oh, like that was to me, like even could it like was just as effective as Barbara's kill,
Right. It's just
because
different, It's like
yeah,
a wounded animal. She's just sacrificing, like she's just ending the suffering kind of thing.
yeah,
It's still brutal in its swiftness, it's just over. But yeah, it's just a fully different thing. And you're in a different camera style there, like it's the
hmm
found footage style and it's kind of distant. But it doesn't cut, so you see the whole thing happen. It's just like a long take, which is kind of interesting. So it's kind of fun to play with those both the different filming styles and just sort of showing kills in different ways. Because Barb, like when she gets stabbed in the face, it's like 8 or 9 frames long. It's just a blink and you miss it kind of thing. Whereas this is much slower, and you're watching them bleed
yeah,
out. It's a much slower and intimate thing, I think.
yeah. That's definitely like the vibe I got from that particular scene. So with Rebecca obviously living at the end, because there was no, I don't think those two, even if they would have fought, would have had a
Mm-hmm.
chance against her, just because
No.
she was just so, you know, psychotic, but also kind of a badass too.
She's
Like
experienced.
very experienced, yes. Obviously, we kind of get a hint of that early on when she's talking about the older couple that she had stay there. We don't see that, but she,
Mm-hmm.
talks about it and then has that kind of breakdown. Yeah, just some of those little things that she does throughout the film, like even before we find out that she's the psychopath that she is, like you can just tell instantly that there's something not right there. There's something off.
Right. For
And
sure.
so with that being said, do you think there could be, a continuation of this? Like, is there, you know,
Um,
an idea?
it, Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been talked about, especially after the fact. Like, it wasn't ever meant to be that way, but when you look at that necklace full of rings, it kind of makes you wonder what else, how else did she get those rings? So, and that's funny because that was just a costuming thing that happened. It was never scripted, the
Oh,
whole
wow.
thing with the rings. It was just my wife did the costuming for everything, and she bought like a pack of just a ton of rings, and we were just like putting them on her fingers, kind of dolling up her hands a little bit. And then we had all these rings left over, and it was just like, oh, well, what if she puts them on a necklace? And as we were talking about it, was like, that could be kind of interesting because she takes the ring. That was always part of it. She took the ring at
Yeah,
the end. Oh, I say yes, and has her thing there. But having a trophy case around her neck that's just kind of visible throughout the film and giving it a different meaning at the very end when she adds Claire's ring to it, I thought that was it was just kind of one of those moments of improv when we're just discussing the character and why she's wearing these things that just sort of sparked this magical thing. And that was awesome because it's just like you get talented people together and they start discussing these characters and they know more things than you do, even though I'm the one that wrote the character. She brought so much life to it, and things like that just kind of happened. So yeah, that was really cool. I mean, it's definitely a character that I'd love. It was so much fun to write her, just to
yeah,
go full out crazy with her. I've never really done that before. So that was super fun. Gracie's great. I loved working with her. She was a blast, and you can tell she loved doing it. So it's something that it's kind of in the back of my mind. But when it takes like 2 years of your life to make a movie, it's hard. I've already got the next one lined up right now, and then potentially one after that too. So it's just like trying to figure out where that all works. But I definitely like to
yeah,
play with that character again. It's a fun sandbox.
for sure. I mean, I was, I've been watching I've like reviews of the film, and people are saying like we have a new like horror icon. I'm like, that could
Hmm.
very well be. I mean, she could very well be, a developing icon just
Right.
from what we've seen of her so far. Because, like you said, that whole necklace thing adds to her lore almost. Like, even
Yeah.
though we don't know where it all began or how she got all those, that just adds to
Totally.
like the mystery of the character. And yeah, definitely, you can definitely tell like it could. I mean, there doesn't necessarily need to be another one, but
Hmm.
it definitely kind of sets it up for like there's a where's she gonna go next, or is she gonna stay? Obviously, stay there. That's her house.
Yeah,
But
there's been sequels, more pointless sequels than this,
yeah,
that
very
have
true.
been
Very
made. So
true.
it's
Like I,
something I definitely would consider.
it definitely have to be like like almost next level because you have this couple that's there's not much fight there, but then I feel like the next couple might be a little more adamant, like a little more like
Right.
there might be a little more of a scuffle, like
Sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think this one, it has that social media lens that it's viewed through, and you're seeing this character through that, and you're exploiting this character. I think if it was a sequel, it'd probably do a more traditional film where it's probably following her, and she's not the antagonist. She's like the bad, she's like the protagonist that is kind of an anti-hero more. So you're
yeah,
following her. Maybe she's got some things that have happened in her past that have made her the way she is. I don't know. But there's definitely a reason why she's gotten those rings that we've kind of discussed a little bit, like where she's going and where she is on her current path of life or whatever when she has this intersecting moment in Superhost. So yeah, I mean yeah, it'd be fun to play with it. It's just a time thing.
yeah, for
Eventually,
sure.
hopefully, it'll happen.
Especially, I mean, like you said, you have multiple projects, you're already working on. Let's talk a little bit because, like you said, you have a film that you're going to be, starting here soon. Let's talk a little bit like what can we expect from this next film of yours?
It's definitely different from Superhost. I mean, it's like a supernatural college campus thriller. It's
Okay.
kind of Final Destination esque. You've got the group of teens, and you get some pretty dope deaths. So that's kind of the thing that we're focusing on right now. It's a bigger scope than Superhost.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's going to be a much bigger production, I think. But yeah, it's just a different kind of situation, and we're currently casting it. And we've already found some great people that we're super excited about. And yeah, I don't want to say too much, but we're going to camera in about 1 month. So it'll be, we'll probably be wrapped early March, I think. And then
Oh,
it
cool.
should be coming out in October. So that's the current plan, I guess.
Oh, very cool. Was that called? I think I saw on your page. Was it called Let It Die?
Let It Lie. Yeah.
Or
Yeah. It's a script my brother and I wrote, which was cool because,
oh, cool.
I'd never written. He's been the writer of the family for a long time, and we'd never really partnered up to write before. So we this was the first time, really kind of working on a full story together. And yeah, it was great. I mean, he's super smart, way better than I am. So it was kind of fun to have that creative voice with me. We could kind of bounce ideas off each other. He could take a stab at it, and I could, we'd edit it and stuff like that. But yeah, we've written a bunch more this year, and it's been a cool partnership that has kind of grown out of this. That it's nice to have someone that talented able to work with.
No, absolutely. Like especially with it being somebody close like your brother.
Yeah,
Like
there's
is
that shorthand where you can
yeah,
just
for
sort of
sure.
each other's histories. You can just it's a lot of referential humor and stuff like that that you
Yeah,
can
for sure.
bounce with. Yeah, so it's been cool.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of great things coming. I mean, you've done Stillborn, Z, Superhost, and you have this film and another one in process. So it sounds like we have some big things to expect from you within the next couple years, at least.
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to, sort of expand out. Like Curtis Harder, who produced Superhost and Z and Stillborn. Sorry, he's got a film that he's in post on right now. That he's just sort of getting through that first cut right now. But we're just, it's just trying to increase the rollout of films, really. And there's a lot of ideas that we've got that we want to keep moving on. So hopefully, there's just more of us, more of our stuff coming out soon.
Yeah, well, I mean, with like the reception from Z and Superhost alone, I can only imagine like the next level of this next film. I'm sure we'll receive just as good as reception.
I'm just trying to plus the stab to the face. If I can beat that on this one, I think I'll be happy.
That was very like even that alone could be considered an iconic film. Like
Yeah.
it was pretty just like remarkable because it's like you didn't really see it coming, and it's
Hmm.
just like the whole like, oh, you shouldn't have said that.
Hmm.
Like it's like it kind of reminded me of completely off rock, but like Captain America Winter Soldier when
Very similar to that.
yeah, when
Nice.
that old lady walks in, it's like, oh, you should have knocked, and blows her away.
Right, right, right.
It's just it's just
There's a
very
casualness about it.
yeah. It's just like because you like she's like that like nothing was gonna happen. Then she's like,
Hmm.
what are you talking about? Damn it! No, I gotta kill you.
Right, for sure.
I'm
Now the
excited.
fun begins.
Yeah, for sure. That's what that was like the turn, like you said, the turning point for the film. It's like this is the oh shit moment. Like that's,
Hmm.
and I'm excited to finally see that it's getting a Blu-ray release.
Yeah, so
February.
February 1st.
Yep. I will definitely be picking up a copy of that. I know my Walmart. I hate Walmart because like for whatever reason, if it's like a not like a big movie, they'll only
It's a
get like
DVD.
the DVD. I'm like,
Hmm.
come on, like even like Malignant, for instance. I mean, that was a that's a big movie, and they only got the
Hmm.
DVD copy of that. I had to go to stinking Target to get a copy of it.
Really? Hmm.
Yeah, I was a little upset about that because I wanted to get it day one, and I like go there and I'm sitting there looking for it. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And there's a
Right,
DVD. I'm like, I'm not a DVD person. Like,
right.
I
Yeah,
just
hopefully. I'm curious because I see that too. Like when I saw Z there, which was my first kind of in the wild sighting of one of my films, it was only the DVD, and I would have bought it if it was the Blu-ray,
yeah.
but I didn't.
I'm kind of a movie snob when it comes to that. Like, I don't like even if it's something like animated. Like, I still have to
Hmm.
have the Blu-ray. Like the
Yeah.
well, I think the biggest thing for me is just because like obviously quality, but even like the quality of the cases of DVDs, like they're just so
Hmm.
flimsy now compared to what they used to be.
Right.
But
I
even
mean,
still,
everything is just. I mean, it's funny. I used to be a big DVD hound and like a big Blu-ray buyer and stuff like that. And then once I switched to buying digitally on iTunes, it just kind of changed everything for me because there's no. It's just a faster way to watch movies. Every
yeah,
time I have to put in a Blu-ray, you have to wait for that FBI warning. You have to wait for the coming soon, and you're just like next, 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 next.
yeah,
It's when you have Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff, it's just such a simpler and faster way. Like the pirates. I mean, back when DVDs were big and pirating was, very rampant,
yeah,
it was just like it was always the better way to watch a film because you just got the film and you
yeah.
didn't have the endless menus and stuff to go through. It was just kind of funny that the pirates had the best experience watching movies back then.
I agree. Like I'm kind of because like I'll get a Blu-ray, but of course I'll upload the digital copy to my Vudu account.
Right.
I like to have both still, just because I like to
Hmm.
have that physical copy because you never know. Like, what if
For
someday like
sure.
Vudu just like disappears and all your shit's gone? It's just like
Totally.
like
I
it's just
know.
a little bit of a like back in the day when people used to play RuneScape and they're thinking like their account got hacked and they lost all their uh, progress and everything. It's just like just a little bit of in the background. Like even like
Totally.
well, not really CDs anymore. Like I don't think very many people buy CDs anymore, which is
Hmm.
unfortunate. You don't even see those at Best Buy anymore.
Right.
But yeah, like I'm really hoping that I don't think my Walmart will get the Blu-ray of Superhost, so I'll probably end up ordering it on Amazon, which it's only like $15, I think. So I mean that's a good
Hmm.
price. Speaking
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
you were talking about Z a second ago. I have a copy of that. I got it from Horror Pack.
Okay.
They released it. They're like a subscription service where like you get
Right.
like four movies a month or something like that. And I actually got Z through that.
Cool.
And I didn't even realize at the time what that movie was until somebody was telling me about it. I actually I was gonna watch. I was supposed to watch it over my Christmas break, and of course, Christmas break comes and goes, and I've only watched like one movie.
Right.
It was
For sure.
like I still need to check it out. I know there's a lot of good oh shit moments in that movie from what people have told me.
Yeah, there's a couple. That's kind of the thing is always trying to have at least one of those moments that can become like the calling card for it. And that one probably has the best, from what I could, what I think, anyways. It's a good one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think I'm all out of questions. I believe, unless you have anything else to add or
What's your favorite Funko Pop? I can
my
see one
favorite
behind you.
Funko. Oh God, that is a hard question.
What's the
Well,
rarest then?
rarest. Oh, it's probably put up. I can tell you my favorite, right? Not like favorite, but favorite right now. Like I got this for Christmas actually. This is the
Oh, that's
10
cool. It's a
inch,
big one.
yeah, 10-inch Myers specialty series. He's got like blood spatter on him.
Cool.
One of I really like probably 3-ish years ago. I was really like hardcore into pops, like unhealthy into pops. Now I've really kind of dialed it down to like absolutely must-haves, like mostly horror pops now. Like I used to be, Marvel, DC, stinking the whole schlam, but now I'm like kind of like dumbing it down to just like horror pops. Like I think this was definitely a favorite this or last year.
It's Ash. Yeah, that's cool.
I pulled the Chase figure, and I was like, I saw that when they announced this one, they showed the Chase version, and I was like, oh man, that'd be so cool to have. So I pre-ordered it on Amazon, just like you kind of roll the dice with the Chases because they're like 1 in 6 chance you'll get one. So it's like, oh, it's Amazon, maybe I'll get lucky. I didn't have my hopes very high, but like it came in. And it came in like face down, like, like this, where I could see this. And I saw the blood on the face, and I'm like, no way. And I pull up, and I'm just like, no. Like, I look like, I remember it was like when I pulled another Chase figure. Where are you? I pulled this out of a box in Hot Topic.
Okay.
And it was like a mystery box. And I remember opening it, and because I knew the Chase was supposed to have like blood on its mask. And I opened it, and I'm like, wait a second. I kind of like did a double take, and I opened it up and looked at it, and like I looked like Charlie from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Back to Hot Topic, like I got the Chase figure.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, it's fun when the unicorns and stuff like that you can grab. That's pretty sweet. You'll have to go to a con and find Bruce Campbell or something like that and let him sign up for you.
I'm sure he'll probably be, because I don't know if you've heard of it, but Horror Hound is the convention I generally go to.
Okay. No, I haven't.
Horror Hound weekend. It's Horror Hound is actually a magazine, like, up there with like Fangoria and Root.
Yeah, I've heard of the magazine. I didn't know they had a conference or a convention.
It's been around for, I want to say they started in like 2007 or 8 convention wise. It started obviously really small, but now it's like grown to like, it's probably one of the biggest horror conventions,
Crazy.
Spooky Empire, and it's local too. It's kind of cool because like I say, like, I'm in between Indianapolis and Cincinnati, and that's where they take place is, Cincinnati and Indianapolis. So it's like knowing that I'm a driving distance to this, people fly in for these things, and I only have to drive like 45 minutes to get there. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, definitely.
That was my very first convention back in 2014, and Bruce Campbell was there actually.
Cool.
And that was kind of when I was just kind of getting started. Like I'm kind of a late bloomer when it comes to horror. Like I didn't, you have so many people like I've met, like, friends I've made, they grew up watching horror. They were bred on horror,
Sure.
I was not one of those kids. I was a scared little shit when I was a kid. Like me and horror were not close, but I think the being afraid of them would be like, I don't know, I guess that kind of led me to kind of be an eventual like liking of the films, I guess. Because it's like one of those things I just finally got my like I got over the fear of it, and then now it's it's all I'm into. So it's like,
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's had such a big just a comeback in the last 6, 7, 8 years or something like that, where the movies they can be a little bit deeper than just like a slasher type of thing. You've got like Ari Aster doing movies that have real emotional cores to them. Mike Flanagan, when he's doing there's still horror in nature, but they've got these characters that have real stories that are being told. And I think that's why horror is doing so well right now, because you can take the genre aspects and mix it in with the emotional core. And that's, that's at least the intention that I have going into a script, but sometimes, it just depends on what you're doing, what the subject matter is. But I think that's why horror is so big right now. It's just, it's very, there's, what Jordan Peele's doing with like Get Out or something like that. It's just very real things that it's talking about, and they're just putting a a ghost face mask over it, which is fun. Makes
Yeah,
it fun.
it's like because like through like the late '90s, early 2000s was kind of like the dead zone for horror because that was like
Totally. The
it just like
Platinum Dunes era.
yeah, it wasn't popular. The films that were coming out weren't very they weren't big, and then like late 2000s, and then the 2010s, it made this giant comeback. Now horror is
Hmm.
like popular again, and that's really
Totally.
cool. It's really cool to see. Like, unfortunately, a big chunk of that is because of The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure.
I mean, not to say not to take away from The Walking Dead because that is a big show. That was a big success for the horror genre.
Hmm.
Sucks, that's where a lot of the fans came from. It's like, oh, I'm at a horror convention because The Walking Dead.
Hmm.
It's like, but there's so many other people here from other films.
Right. They'll get it eventually. It's like
Yeah,
you. If they're a little bit late, they'll just sort of,
yeah,
they'll learn more and more. It's a gateway drug.
for sure. It's like it's I was talking to David Naughton from American Werewolf in London. I was kind of telling him that like I was not like raised on it. He's like, well, it's better late than never, right?
For
He
sure.
was
Yeah.
he was really cool to meet. I've met man, just like that's a topic alone. Like all the people I've got to meet, like at conventions, like guest wise and stuff. That
Hmm.
it's so cool to like get to like meet people that you admire and like admire their work.
Yeah. It's a very welcoming community too. Like the
Yes.
fans, like the people like the Barbara Cramptons that are in that position, they're still very, very warm to the fans. They love the fans. They love, they want to continue to give them what they initially like them for. Like there isn't that a lot of the cases there's not that fear of being typecast into this role or this particular genre or anything because I think just it's such a diverse group of people that all kind of come together with a pretty big passion for this one genre, which is really fun. Like going to festivals and playing your movies in front of crowds that are just at a glance they're a very different looking crowd. Like there's some very straight laced people. There's more like metal kind of dudes over here and stuff,
Yeah.
and they all kind of like the same thing. And it's pretty fun to see and just sort of interact with and chat with them and just sort of see how you can connect with them, which is always the fun part of being a director of these kind of films.
Yeah, it's definitely like you said. It's definitely the most like because I mean, you go to a convention like for instance, the Horror Hound. I mean, we're all there for the same reason. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you meet all these you make new friends. It becomes like this giant family. It's like going to a concert.
Mm-hmm.
You're all there for the same reason. It's like you're not there to like fight somebody. You're there because unless you are there to
Mm-hmm.
fight somebody, but
It's possible.
there are people that do that, I guess. Those are jerks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, you go to these things and it's like everybody, it's just like a giant family. Like I can go to this convention and just talk to anybody. Like, you go to these, like a vendor booth, even if it's like, something small or like an author, just
Right.
you can just connect with those people. And that's what's so nice about the horror genre is because there's so much connectivity there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, there isn't like a drama con or
Yeah.
a comedy con or something like that, where a bunch of fans are lining up to get like Ace Ventura 2 posters signed or whatever.
I would
It's
love to
just,
do that though.
yeah, well, if Jim Carrey's doing that, that'd be different. But
Yeah.
in general, I think it's like fantasy, sci-fi, and horror are kind of the ones that bring out those passion, the passion out of people,
For
for
sure.
whatever reason. I part of it's probably like nostalgia for their childhood where they may have connected to something like Star Wars or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of people came up with that, and now there's the new generation of it, and so there's like that bridging the gap between childhood and adulthood, and they're just sort of embracing it. But yeah, I mean, it's just a very cool community for
Yeah.
sure.
It's what's kind of it's so nice about like all these like franchises that have these like you have the originals, you have these remakes, you have these newer films like Halloween for instance. Like I mean,
Hmm.
there's a Halloween film for every generation,
Sure.
dating back to like '78, the original one. But
Hmm.
it's like every decade has had a Halloween film, so
Hmm.
it's kind of cool to like like these kids here may not like the originals because they're Generation Z kids that don't like old films, like
Right.
my wife, for instance, who doesn't like black and white films just because they're black and white. I'm like, you don't make any sense to me.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, it's just it's kind of cool to be able to have this um and being able to find that community and stuff. I think the internet definitely helps and just bringing people together too. But just finding communities that you can bond over is it's never a bad thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's it's nice to get to talk to yeah, like even like doing these interviews is something like I started this out of a hobby, basically, just like I made the Rotten Report initially, just like initially it was going to be like a review page, but then like I would stress out about it. I'm like, man, I gotta like think of like what's my first review gonna be, and like just put
Hmm.
it off, put it off, put it off. I'm like, well, let's do something different. Like let's mix it up a little, do something more than just reviews. Like,
Hmm.
and then I did my first interview back of December of 2020, and it was with a band. It was like a horror punk band, and they thought like I was some big wig like reviewer, and I'm like, I'm just doing this out of a hobby. Like this
Hmm.
is like and still like I've done interviews with David Howard Thornton from Terrifier. I think Sandy Johnson from the first Halloween.
Hmm.
It sucks because I did an interview with Mick Garris recently,
Oh, cool.
but unfortunately I wasn't able to like save it.
I don't
And
know.
it was a video call, so
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't able to like save it like this. So
Hmm.
it kind of sucks because like I'm very fortunate to have gotten to you know you know be a part of that and talk to him.
Hmm.
But it sucks that nobody else is going to be able to see that.
Right, for sure. Yeah, he's a great interview. His podcast is great.
I love
He
postmortem.
does a good job. Yeah, for
He
sure.
like he's got such a soothing voice. Like he
Yeah.
just sitting there talking to him is just like I could listen to him talk about anything like all day. I have his
Hmm.
I got his book recently and I've been reading through it a little bit. I need to jump back into it, but he's done a little bit of everything. Like I think my first question for him was like, "Is there anything you can't do?"
Right.
And he
Yeah,
goes,
that's
"Don't
cool.
expect." He's like, "Don't expect me to throw a baseball anytime soon."
Yeah, that sounds right. That's funny.
He's he's like that. That's my older brother. My oldest brother George was the sports guy.
Right.
I
That's
can't like
cool. Yeah,
just some of the stuff he's done. Like he worked like he was a receptionist at Star Wars when it was like being made. I'm
it's
like
crazy.
just to think that like he said like in the book he was saying like he was sitting at his desk and he'd have this like plate with like buttons he would hand out and I'm like I couldn't imagine how much those buttons go for now.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's funny. Like all those guys that came up during that time, where they had they sort of started as something on Star Wars. Like even David Fincher, he was on Return of the Jedi and spun off into music videos, commercials, all that stuff. It's just that was such a prolific period in filmmaking just because there was we didn't have like computer graphics or anything like that.
Yeah,
Everything was just so talent driven. It was like the best of the best working on this stuff and coming up together and pushing each other. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's just now technology and stuff has made it possible for anybody to do stuff. So it's I can take up and make a movie out of a like a hobby as well. It's just like grab a camera, grab my iPhone and shoot something. And they just didn't have that back then. So it really
yeah,
just drew the best people that would work the hardest, and they all kind of found each other. Like you have the Spielberg and the George Lucases and the Robert Zemeckis of the worlds and stuff like that. They all kind of came up together too. And it's crazy to think about that these just like those rooms of those guys all just hanging out and talking, and shooting the shit about these films. It's crazy because they're all masters of sort of filmmaking, everything like that. It's different now. Everybody can do it, which is cool, and it just sort of
it's
allows
yeah,
a ton of stuff to
it's
happen.
I mean it's definitely cool that anybody can really pick up a camera or a camera device like a phone and
Hmm.
make something, and it's cool to have that those tools because obviously cameras are super expensive,
Hmm.
but to say like, hey, I have an iPhone, I can shoot a little short film off of it's. I mean, it's really cool to think that filmmaking has come a long way.
Totally,
um,
definitely.
I was gonna say something real quick. We were talking about conventions and your next film. Horror Hound. I'll dive into Horror Hound for a second. They take place in March and September, and they do
Hmm.
have they have a film fest where they show, you know, new you know, independent films. And I got to thinking, like, you know, you said you were hoping to wrap and release your next one by October. Makes me
Hmm.
think that maybe the next event in that March of 23, maybe try getting your film at the Horror Hound Film Fest.
The hardest part with festivals, and I ran into this with Superhost too, is once the film is out publicly, festivals won't show it. Like, with
Gotcha.
Z and stuff, we did a nice long run, and we were playing like Telluride Horror, all these different places, and then it came out. Whereas Superhost, it came out early September of 2020, 2021, and all the great genre festivals are kind of like late September into October, and we couldn't play any of them. So it's always just like a time thing that you got to figure out. It's like a huge sort of give and take with that. This new one that I'm doing, I don't even know what'll happen with it, because it'll be, we'll wrap in March, and then it should be coming out in October. So it's just one of those things where it's like I don't know if there will be a premiere at a festival like is normal, or if it's just going to be like a release. It's one of those things that just sort of, it's like impossible to think about right now. There's so many problems being solved
Yeah,
at the moment that that's kind of the priority.
very true. But even still, like, I'm in contact. I'm friends with the guys that kind of run Horror Hound, so I mean, I
Cool.
could definitely put in a good word for it. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
even
for sure.
because I mean, like, they show films that even have been released already. So I
Okay.
mean, just depends on, you know. I could definitely put a good word in, because I know the guy who runs the film fest as well.
Right.
I
Okay.
think it's all
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great.
mostly it's all about just like getting it, because they have like a time window where you basically like submit your film
Hmm.
for the fest, and I think it's just all about, like, you know, getting it in on time, more or less. It's not
Yeah,
whether or
yeah.
not, I don't think it really matters to them on like the release date or when it had been released or what have you. But
Hmm.
like I said, I could definitely put in a good word. It'd be cool to see like something, you know, along your, you know, expertise at Horror Hound.
Yeah, I mean, festivals are definitely, something that I was sad I missed with Superhost, because Z and Stillborn, we had pretty good runs, and that's the best way to see a movie, is at a festival with a bunch of fans
It's
of the
definitely a,
genre, and that are going to enjoy it for the same reasons. You just don't, once it's out at home, it's on Shutter or whatever. Like, I have no idea. You don't get that communal experience that you do at a festival. So unless you're getting like a big theatrical release, you're never going to be able to get that. So those festival screenings are always just, they're kind of, you like, it's hard to compare it to anything. It's just, that's what you want as a filmmaker.
yeah, for sure. And like you said, it's true. I've been to a couple like premieres at, you know, Horror Hound, and being able to be like saying I got to experience that is like, there was a film, I don't know if you heard of it. It's called Candy Corn, that came out
Hmm.
back in 2000. I want to say 19. It was obviously kind of a Halloween themed film,
Hmm.
and I don't even think the film was even like 100% finished. Like, it was finished, but it wasn't like, you know, the final cut. Like,
Sure.
they were like, it's 95% done basically. So I mean, it was to the point where they could show it, and like nothing that they
Sure.
did to it now. But I just remember going to like it, because it was like the final screening of the night,
Hmm.
and going just trying to get into that, like, there was that whole area was flooded, like all these people wanting to watch this movie, and then like being able to be in the room and experience it with all the people that got to see it was definitely, it's definitely a really cool experience to
Nice.
see something that nobody else has seen before with a
Right.
big group of people.
Yeah. And with the creators and stuff there too, there's definitely like an energy in the room that it's impossible to replicate again.
Speaking of candy corn, I think I have it right here actually. I have, there it is. I don't know if you've maybe seen that
No, it
cover.
doesn't look
No?
familiar. It's cool.
I think Epic Pictures really, Epic Pictures Dread
Oh
really
yeah. Right.
released.
Okay.
So they're, I mean, they're kind of up there with like Shutter. I mean, obviously Dread. I don't think they have a streaming.
Hmm.
They might. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I have so much crap back here. for hopefully once we get a new house, I'll actually have a room. Like I'm in. This is kind of like where I put all my collectibles and stuff, but it's initially a storage room.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully, once we get an actual new house, I can actually have a room dedicated to like this.
Your little man cave.
Yeah, initially, so my man cave is like tied in with a bunch of boxes.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I think I know you said you have a call.
Yeah, it's kind of pre-production mode right now, so it's
Gotcha.
that's always going.
Oh, it's okay. I actually have my clock up there now because I just got a new phone
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still getting used to it. So like I didn't realize that I actually have a clock up there.
Okay.
So that's cool. I can actually know what time it is now.
Right.
My old phone, I had no idea. Like, be like, man, we've been talking for an hour and a half. I wouldn't even know because I didn't have a clock to look at.
Right.
But well, I feel like we covered. We covered a lot. We covered Superhost. What's coming next from you, and I definitely look forward to seeing this next film of yours.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. I'll definitely be posting stuff on social about it as I'm going. So
Hopefully, the production's a little, I guess, less filled with bugs this time.
yeah, I have no idea. It'll be cold. I know that it's gonna be very cold.
Yeah,
So that'll be
well,
one thing.
at least they'll be mostly inside, or will it?
Not really, no. There's
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of exteriors and there's a lot of night stuff, so it's going to be a very, very cold movie. But
you
yeah,
said
we'll see.
yeah. So yeah, you'll be shooting in February. So yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Especially like around here, like our winter's basically February.
Yeah, yeah. It
It's
seems
terrible.
like it's the same over there.
Yeah, it's like December might be hit or miss, but then like our winter really doesn't really start until like late January through
Right.
February, even sometimes into March.
Totally.
It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it keeps shifting later, it feels like.
We need my wife keeps telling me they need to add an extra month to the calendar to kind of let the seasons reset themselves. And I don't, I like, that's not, she's not wrong. I feel like
Like a
that would,
leap, the leap year just needs to be more than one day kind of thing. It needs to
yeah,
keep fixing
we need
itself
a leap year, but like a whole month of it.
for sure. Cool, man.
Well,
Well,
sir.
I do have to bounce, so I apologize. It was
Okay.
cool having me on. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you joining me, letting me, pick your brain for a while. It was great talking to you. Great to meet you. I guess virtually, of course.
Hmm.
Hopefully, one of these days we can cross paths in person and bullshit some more.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right. Well, good luck with production, and hope to chat with you again sometime.
Thanks, man. We'll talk soon.
Of course.
Later.
Well, everybody, I think that is all I have for today. I want to thank Brandon again for joining me. It was a pleasure getting to talk. Great talking about Superhost and what's to come. Definitely follow him on his socials to get all the scoop of his next film. And if you've liked this interview, hopefully those watching on the YouTube, once I get it loaded, will like and subscribe as well. And hopefully, I have not announced this yet, but I'll go ahead and announce it. Next Tuesday, I'm going live, I think, on Facebook for the first time. I'm going live with Elsie Holt. You might know Elsie Holt as the lamb mask from Your Next. He was also in VHS 2. But we're going to be talking about the new film coming out, Time's Up, the new New Year's Eve horror film. They just released the trailer for it on New Year's Eve, and it looks fantastic. It's got Damien Maffei, Hannah Fierman, Janie Morrow, Felissa Rose, Dave Sheridan. It looks like an absolute blast. So if you're a fan of LC's, definitely tune in. I will post more about it once we get closer. So without further ado, I'll hopefully everybody has a great rest of your evening, and I'm going to bed. So I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for sticking around, and hopefully to see you on the next one.